Even Blake stood at the front of the sleek human envoy ship, his gaze fixed on the distant star system, where the heart of the Galactic Empire pulsed. A knot tightened in his chest, but his expression remained calm, a practiced mask of diplomacy. His mission was crucial, an attempt to broker peace between the Galactic Empire and the Free Worlds Alliance, a coalition of systems that had long been in conflict with the Empire's authoritarian rule. The stakes were high. The Free Worlds had been pressing for trade and autonomy, but the Empire, with its iron grip on the galaxy, had resisted. If Avon could succeed in his mission, it might finally end centuries of bloodshed. But as the ship glided into Imperial space, the uneasy tension between the two sides felt palpable. There were whispers among human intelligence operatives back home that the Empire might have no intention of negotiating. Still, Avon trusted in diplomacy's power, in the quiet strength of human reason. On board, the crew buzzed with quiet anticipation. But as they neared the designated rendezvous station, an unspoken sense of dread began to seep into the air. The holographic comms display flickered on, and Avon's heart skipped a beat when a cold Imperial officer's face appeared. Human diplomat Avon Blake. The officer's voice was sharp and authoritarian. "You are under arrest on charges of espionage and subversion of the Imperial crown. Stand down and prepare to be boarded." The message was brief, chilling. Before Avon could respond, the comms cut off. The crew scrambled into action, but it was too late. Imperial ships had already surrounded them. Tension crackled in the air as the massive Imperial vessels began their lockdown maneuver. Avon's hand gripped the armrest tightly, though his mind was racing with the implications. The Empire was not interested in peace. It was a trap. Within minutes, the ship's control systems were overridden. Avon could hear the hum of the Imperial boarding parties moving through the hallways. They were swift, efficient, and brutal. The diplomat tried to rally his thoughts. There had to be a way out, a chance to defuse the situation. But the door to the command room burst open, and a cadre of heavily armed Imperial soldiers stormed in. Avon stood, but the soldiers barely spared him a glance before binding his wrists with tight cuffs. "No escape, human," the leader sneered. "The Empire has its eye on you." They marched him through the corridors of his ship, then out onto the cold, sterile decks of an Imperial cruiser. He was not just a prisoner. He was a message. As they shoved him into a holding cell, Avon's mind raced, his hope dwindling with every passing second. The Empire had just ignited something far greater than they realized. Avon Blake's mind raced as he sat in the sterile, dimly lit cell. His wrists ached from the shackles, but the pain was nothing compared to the gnawing sense of betrayal. His mission had been simple: to broker peace between the Galactic Empire and the Free Worlds Alliance. Yet now he was imprisoned by the very regime he had tried to make peace with. Every passing moment felt like a hammer strike to the foundations of everything he believed in. Outside, Imperial forces moved with precision. Their soldiers marched through the ship's corridors, their footsteps echoing with the cold authority that defined the Empire. Blake had been trained to maintain composure in any situation. But this felt different. The Empire had no intention of negotiating. They never had. His arrest was not a mistake, but a calculated move to assert dominance over humanity. Back on Earth, President Jackson Hale was making decisions that would reshape the future of the human race. The emergency session continued, now dominated by a heated exchange between military and diplomatic advisors. General Marcus Drake's voice, sharp and urgent, broke through the tension. "President Hale, we can't let this go unanswered," Drake said, his hands clenched into fists on the table. "The Empire will see our hesitation as weakness. If we do nothing, they'll know they can do whatever they want to us. We need to strike now before they solidify their grip on us." Hale met the general's gaze with a steady calm, his expression unreadable. "This isn't just about Avon. It's about the survival of the human race in this galaxy. If we retaliate without thought, we risk the annihilation of everything we've built. We need to be strategic." The room fell silent as the weight of his words settled over them. The Federation had built alliances with numerous systems, but none of them had ever been tested against the might of the Galactic Empire. A full-scale war would be devastating, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. But then, the tension broke when the Federation's intelligence chief, Amelia Kent, spoke up. "President, we've just received a transmission from one of our deep-cover operatives. It's from Blake." The room leaned in as the holographic display flickered to life, revealing a grainy image of Even, his face gaunt and his eyes hollow, but unmistakable. His voice, however, was firm. "They've been planning this for years," Even said, his words crackling through the transmission. "The Empire wasn't just after me. They'd been watching you, watching humanity, waiting for the right moment to strike. They want to crush us before we become a threat." Hale's heart sank. Blake's capture had been a prelude, a calculated step in a larger plan to break humanity's resolve. The Empire knew humanity was becoming too powerful, too independent. And now, it was clear. They would not stop until humanity was either subjugated or destroyed. In that moment, President Hale made his decision. He stood tall, his voice resolute. "Prepare the fleets. We're going to war. For Even. For humanity. For the future." Across the galaxy, the first wave of human ships began to mobilize. The war had officially begun. The declaration of war rippled through the galaxy like a shockwave. On Earth, the streets were filled with protests and fervent speeches as the Federation mobilized its fleets in preparation for a conflict that could consume everything. Across the human colonies, fear and anger mixed with determination. The capture of Avon Blake had become more than a political incident. It was a catalyst that galvanized humanity into action. In the United Earth Federation's command center, President Jackson Hale watched the progress of the mobilization on a holographic map. Every Federation ship, every military outpost, every colony was on alert. The Empire had crossed a line, and there was no turning back now. Hale's mind raced as he thought of Even, held captive by the Empire, tortured for secrets he didn't have. The pressure of the decision weighed on him, but there was no other choice. The Empire needed to be stopped. "Mr. President, the fleets are ready," Admiral Olivia Grant reported, her voice steady, but with a steel edge that reflected the gravity of the moment. "We've coordinated with the Free Worlds Alliance. About 40% of their forces are prepared to assist. But they're hesitant. They're scared. They've seen the power the Empire wields." Hale nodded grimly. The Free Worlds were fractured. Independent systems that had resisted imperial rule for years, but never fully united. Some wanted to join the Federation's war effort. Others were too afraid to take a side. The Empire's long reach of fear and propaganda had held the galaxy in a state of submission for too long. "If they want to stay neutral, let them," Hale said, his voice cutting through the tension. "But we'll fight this war with or without them. And we'll show them that humanity doesn't bow to anyone." Meanwhile, aboard the Imperial cruiser where Even Blake was imprisoned, the Diplomat had begun to piece together the true nature of his captors. His cell was isolated, guarded by a brutal team of Imperial soldiers who had little interest in pleasantries. But in the silence of his confinement, Avon had overheard conversations, slivers of information that painted a terrifying picture. The Empire's plans went far beyond the subjugation of one man. They were preparing for an all-out campaign to dominate the galaxy, targeting humanity as their next great conquest. His instincts screamed that the Empire would never stop at just this one move. The Empire had its eyes set on humanity's growing influence, and Even's mission was to neutralize that threat before it fully emerged. If the Federation resisted, they would crush it. If humanity fought back, they would burn the galaxy down to ensure total control. Even's fists clenched around the edge of the cot. They had underestimated human resolve. He had no doubt that the Federation, now roused to anger, would retaliate. But it would take more than just a fight for survival. It would take everything humanity had to make sure the Empire did not wipe them from existence. Back on Earth, President Hale's voice broke through the tense air of the Federation Command Center. It's time to show them what humanity is capable of. We don't fight just for Blake. We fight for our future. With that, the first wave of Federation warships jumped to hyperspace, heading for the Empire's borders. The war had begun. Outside, Imperial forces moved with precision. Their soldiers marched through the ship's corridors, their footsteps echoing with the cold authority that defined the Empire. Blake had been trained to maintain composure in any situation. But this felt different. The Empire had no intention of negotiating. They never had. His arrest was not a mistake, but a calculated move to assert dominance over humanity. Back on Earth, President Jackson Hale was making decisions that would reshape the future of the human race. The emergency session continued, now dominated by a heated exchange between military and diplomatic advisors. General Marcus Drake's voice, sharp and urgent, broke through the tension. "President Hale, we can't let this go unanswered," Drake said, his hands clenched into fists on the table. "The Empire will see our hesitation as weakness. If we do nothing, they'll know they can do whatever they want to us. We need to strike now, before they solidify their grip on us." Hale met the general's gaze with a steady calm, his expression unreadable. "This isn't just about even. It's about the survival of the human race in this galaxy. If we retaliate without thought, we risk the annihilation of everything we've built. We need to be strategic." The room fell silent as the weight of his words settled over them. The Federation had built alliances with numerous systems, but none of them had ever been tested against the might of the Galactic Empire. A full-scale war would be devastating, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. But then, the tension broke when the Federation's intelligence chief, Amelia Kent, spoke up. "President, we've just received a transmission from one of our deep cover operatives. It's from Blake." The room leaned in as the holographic display flickered to life, revealing a grainy image of Even, his face gaunt and his eyes hollow, but unmistakable. His voice, however, was firm. "They'd been planning this for years," Even said, his words crackling through the transmission. "The Empire wasn't just after me. They'd been watching you, watching humanity, waiting for the right moment to strike. They want to crush us before we become a threat." Hale's heart sank. Blake's capture had been a prelude, a calculated step in a larger plan to break humanity's resolve. The Empire knew humanity was becoming too powerful, too independent. And now, it was clear. They would not stop until humanity was either subjugated or destroyed. In that moment, President Hale made his decision. He stood tall, his voice resolute. "Prepare the fleets. We're going to war. For Even. For humanity. For the future." Across the galaxy, the first wave of human ships began to mobilize. The war had officially begun. The first wave of Federation warships tore through hyperspace toward the heart of Imperial territory, their sleek hulls cutting through the stars with terrifying precision. In the command center aboard the flagship U.S. Victory, Admiral Olivia Grant stood at the tactical display, her eyes narrowed, calculating. The fleet consisted of the finest ships humanity had ever built, each equipped with cutting-edge technology that had been developed in secrecy for years. The Empire had underestimated the resolve of humanity, and now they would see what that resolve looked like when it was backed by a fleet ready for war. "Admiral, we've detected Imperial ships on an intercept course," Lieutenant Darrow reported, his voice tense as the readouts flashed across the holographic display. "At least 3 destroyers, with support frigates and interceptors." Grant's lips tightened. They knew we were coming. Of course they did. She tapped a few controls, and the ship's crew went to battle stations. "Increase speed to maximum. Prepare to engage." The Victory surged forward, its engines roaring as the Federation fleet followed in formation. In the distance, the Imperial ships came into view, their massive silhouettes looming against the backdrop of distant stars. The Federation ships held their formation, waiting for the inevitable clash, each captain aware of the stakes. This battle would set the tone for the war ahead. At the same time, in the heart of the Empire's command fleet, High Commander Tiberius Kell watched the incoming human ships with cold, calculating eyes. He had expected this. The humans were audacious, always daring to push the boundaries of their place in the galaxy. But the Empire was prepared. They had the resources, the firepower, and the ruthless determination to crush any rebellion before it could take root. "Deploy all starfighters and prepare the heavy cruisers," Kell ordered. "We will show them the cost of defying the Empire." The first shots rang out like thunder as the two fleets collided in space. Energy beams shot through the dark expanse, slamming into shields and hulls with bone-shaking force. Federation ships retaliated with well-coordinated barrages of plasma fire, the human fleets proving themselves more agile and effective than the Imperial forces had anticipated. It wasn't just the ship's advanced weaponry that gave the humans an edge, it was their tactics. They moved like a single entity, each ship working in perfect harmony, anticipating each other's moves with uncanny precision. In the chaos of the battle, a message was sent from the Victory to President Hale's command center. "We've broken through their first line of defense, but it's only a matter of time before they reinforce." Admiral Grant's voice crackled over the line. "This will be the decisive moment. Hold them." Hale's voice came through the comms, his resolve unwavering. "If we can push through this, we'll send a message they'll never forget." The Federation ships pressed forward, determined to reach the Imperial capital and set the stage for a confrontation that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Meanwhile, aboard the Imperial cruiser where even Blake was held, his heart pounded as he knew this was only the beginning. The war for humanity's future was just starting, and the Empire had just awakened a force it could never hope to defeat. The space battle raged on in the cold emptiness between the two fleets, each side unleashing their most devastating weapons in a vicious exchange of firepower. Federation warships darted and weaved, firing precision strikes at the massive Imperial destroyers that seemed impervious to lesser attacks. But humanity had come prepared. Their ships were faster, more maneuverable, and their crews fought with a ferocity born from the burning desire to protect their homes and their future. Admiral Olivia Grant's hands flew across the control panel, her every command precise as she guided the Victory through the hellish barrage of enemy fire. "Redirect energy to forward shields. Fire at will," she ordered, her voice a calm anchor in the midst of the chaos. A moment later, the Victory unleashed a barrage of plasma missiles, their trails of light cutting through the dark expanse to impact an Imperial cruiser's weak spot. The ship erupted in flames, its hull buckling under the force of the strike. The Empire's pride was slowly crumbling, one ship at a time. Meanwhile, back aboard the Imperial command cruiser, High Commander Tiberius Kell seethed. His Imperial fleet, once an unstoppable juggernaut, was faltering in the face of the relentless human assault. "Where is the backup?" he demanded, his fists clenched as he watched his forces lose ground. His ships had been designed for overwhelming firepower, not the agility and cunning that the humans brought to the table. "Reinforcements are en route," his tactical officer responded, though there was doubt in the officer's voice. "But the human fleet is closing in on our capital ships. If we don't contain them, we may lose this system." The Empire's defensive lines were collapsing, but Kell refused to admit defeat. "We'll hold the line. Call in the reserves and send out the interceptors. We will crush them before they can advance any further." On the ground, even Blake's situation had grown more dire. Imprisoned in a high-security cell aboard the same cruiser, he could feel the vibration of the ship's damaged hull as it withstood the barrage from the Federation fleet. He had long suspected the Empire's true intentions, but now, as he overheard more conversations between his guards, the full extent of their plans became clear. The Empire wasn't just interested in subjugating humanity. They had been preparing for war on a galactic scale for decades. Blake realized that his capture wasn't the result of some misunderstanding. It was part of a larger strategy to ensure that humanity's expansion was halted before it ever posed a true threat. A cold anger burned through him as the ship shuddered again, the sound of explosions outside amplifying the gravity of his situation. But the knowledge also brought clarity. Even knew that the war was not just about his release. It was about the future of the human race. As the Federation's offensive continued to push deeper into Imperial space, the message was clear. Humanity was no longer a side player in the galactic game. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the Empire had awakened a sleeping giant. Evan's thoughts turned to President Hale and Admiral Grant, both of whom he trusted implicitly. He knew that the Federation's victory depended not just on military might, but on the unwavering determination of humanity itself. The question now was whether the humans could turn the tide before the Empire unleashed its most devastating weapon. Back in the midst of the battle, Admiral Grant's voice rang through the fleet's comms. "This is it. We break through now, or we lose everything." The Federation had come too far to turn back. The Federation fleet pressed on, relentlessly advancing through the heart of Imperial territory. Each battle was a brutal test of humanity's resolve, but the tide was beginning to shift. The Empire's once formidable defenses were starting to crumble under the onslaught of Federation firepower, the human ships proving their superiority in ways the Empire had never anticipated. The Imperial forces, despite their overwhelming numbers, had failed to contain the human surge. Admiral Olivia Grant stood at the helm of the Victory, watching the tactical display as the last of the Imperial destroyers fell. The Federation fleet had won this first engagement, but it had come at a cost. The Victory had taken serious damage, and many other ships in the fleet were heavily wounded. But the Empire had lost far more. The sight of their ships turning to wreckage, their once pristine hulls disintegrating in the cold void, sent a clear message. Humanity would not be silenced. Grant's comms blinked, and she answered it immediately. "Report, Lieutenant. We've received word from Federation Command," Lieutenant Darrow said, his voice tight with urgency. "They've launched a full assault on Imperial core worlds. They're expecting us to move on their capital." Grant's heart sank. The Federation had pushed further than anyone could have imagined. But there was something unsettling about this victory. The Empire's military might had been formidable, yet now it seemed to be fracturing. She couldn't shake the feeling that the Empire had more in store than just a fight for space. "We're moving forward," Grant said, her voice firm. "Prepare to engage the next wave." Meanwhile, deep within the heart of the Empire, High Commander Tiberius Kell had called for an emergency meeting with his inner circle. His jaw clenched as he surveyed the reports. His fleet was in disarray, and his remaining forces were retreating to the outer systems for regrouping. The Empire had underestimated humanity's ability to strike back. The very rebellion they had brushed off as a nuisance had become a juggernaut. "We cannot allow this to continue," Kell growled, slamming his fist onto the table. "The humans think they've won, but they have no idea what's coming for them." An officer at the table, pale and sweating, looked up nervously. "Sir, we have a contingency plan. It's in place. The weapon is operational." Kell's eyes flashed with cold determination. "Activated. We'll show them what true power looks like." Back aboard the Imperial cruiser where Evan Blake was imprisoned, the ship lurched violently as another explosion rocked its hull. The sounds of battle outside were deafening, and Evan knew it was only a matter of time before the Federation fleet would breach the Imperial defenses. But even as the ship's lights flickered and alarms blared, he knew something worse was coming. The Empire had its secrets, and Blake's years of diplomatic experience had taught him that no corner of power was without a weapon. And if the Empire was resorting to its final contingency plan, it meant they were willing to burn everything to preserve their control. Evan's heart pounded as he realized the full scope of the Empire's desperation. The war was far from over. Now, humanity was facing a threat even more terrifying than they could have imagined. The Federation fleet pushed deeper into Imperial space, the weight of victory heavy on their shoulders. But the atmosphere on the flagship Victory was far from celebratory. Despite the crushing losses the Empire had suffered in the previous battles, Admiral Olivia Grant couldn't shake the growing sense of unease that gnawed at her. The Empire was known for its cruelty, but something about the way they were retreating, almost methodically, felt wrong. It was as though they were preparing for something far worse than anything the humans had yet encountered. Grant paced the command deck, her eyes flicking between tactical screens and the worried faces of her officers. The Federation fleet had broken through Imperial defenses, but as they neared the core systems, they had encountered no further resistance. It was unsettlingly quiet. "Admiral," Lieutenant Darrow said, his voice cutting through her thoughts, "we've intercepted Imperial transmissions. It's not good." "What are they saying?" Grant's voice was calm, but her mind was already racing through possible scenarios. "They're activating something. We don't know exactly what, but it's something big. A weapon. And they're preparing to launch it." A chill ran down Grant's spine. She knew that the Empire had always held back a trump card, a weapon of mass destruction capable of wiping out entire fleets. But until now, it had been nothing more than a rumor, a weapon that was more myth than reality. "Damn it," Grant muttered under her breath. Of course they were hiding something like this. "Prepare the fleet for evasive maneuvers. We need to move faster and coordinate with the rest of the forces. If they're ready to launch something, we need to stop it before it happens." Elsewhere, on the Imperial cruiser where even Blake was held, the same sense of dread had begun to settle over the ship. The sounds of battle had faded, replaced by a deafening hum that seemed to reverberate through the walls. Even had been too focused on his imprisonment to notice at first, but now it was impossible to ignore. The ship's lights flickered again, and the ground beneath him trembled. His heart raced as he realized what was happening. The Empire wasn't just planning to stop the Federation. They were preparing to destroy them, along with anyone who dared stand in their way. Through the haze of alarms and warnings, even overheard snippets of conversations between his guards. They were speaking in hushed tones, but the words were unmistakable. "The Reaper Protocol is activated." The Reaper Protocol. It was the weapon, the ultimate deterrent, a planet killer, capable of annihilating entire fleets in a single strike, and worse, capable of wiping out entire worlds in mere seconds. The rumors were true. Evan's pulse quickened. He knew that if the Empire launched the Reaper Protocol, it would not only decimate the Federation fleet, it could end humanity's chances of survival in the galaxy forever. He had to act. Somehow, he needed to escape and warn them. The clock was ticking, and every passing moment brought them closer to the Empire's final, catastrophic move. Back aboard the Federation fleet, Grant stood at the helm, watching the stars as they sped past. The calm before the storm had settled, but she knew that storm was coming. And when it hit, everything humanity had fought for would be tested. The Federation fleet gathered its remaining strength, a tight formation of ships positioned just outside the outer rim of Imperial-controlled space. There was no going back now. The Reaper Protocol was real, and it was humanity's greatest threat. The Federation had learned too late that the Empire's desperation had driven them to their final, most terrifying option. Now they faced the grim reality of fighting not just for their survival, but for the survival of every world they held dear. Admiral Olivia Grant stood in front of the holographic map, her face grim as she reviewed the latest intel. "We can't outrun this. If we allow the Empire to launch the Reaper Protocol, they'll wipe us out, and they'll finish what they started by erasing entire human colonies. We'll be left with nothing." "We'll need to strike fast, Admiral," Lieutenant Darrow added, his tone strained. "The weapon is located deep in their command structure, but we've been unable to pinpoint its exact coordinates. Our best chance is a direct assault on their capital." Grant nodded, her fingers drumming on the table. The Empire had gone to extremes to keep this weapon hidden, and now the fight wasn't just to defeat the Imperial fleet, it was to prevent a cataclysmic strike. But the question remained, Could they reach the weapon in time? Could they find a way to stop the Reaper protocol before it wiped them from existence? Back aboard the Imperial cruiser, even Blake was running out of time. His hands were raw from the attempts to break free of his cell, but something had shifted. He could sense the ship was nearing its final stage of preparation for the Reaper protocol. The vibrations had grown stronger, the hum of the engines more pronounced as the countdown began. His mind raced. There had to be a way to stop this. Something, anything. He thought of his people, his family, the millions of lives that depended on the Federation's success. If the Empire was allowed to launch this weapon, it would be the end of everything. His escape, his warnings, had to matter. There was no other choice. Through sheer will and desperation, Blake broke free of his restraints, his body bruised and battered from the effort. But he didn't stop. He crawled through the narrow maintenance ducts, navigating the ship's dark, labyrinthine passages as he tried to reach the command center. Every second counted. Finally, with a burst of adrenaline, even burst into the main operations room. The officers were distracted by the chaos of the battle outside, unaware that their captive had slipped past their guards. He bolted toward the nearest console and began inputting commands, overriding the ship's systems as best as he could. Meanwhile, the Federation fleet was approaching the Empire's capital. A final battle was imminent, a desperate fight that would decide the fate of humanity. The Reaper protocol would launch in minutes. Admiral Grant's voice cut through the comms, resolute as ever. All ships, prepare to engage. This ends now. The last hope rested with them. And with Even, who had managed to disable the core systems of the Empire's greatest weapon. Humanity's future hung in the balance. As the Federation fleet entered the heart of Imperial space, the final clash between two opposing forces began, a fight for everything.